This morning, we're learning more about a debate happening more and more in our communities. What sort of security should you expect from the apartment complex that you live in? In April, 16-year-old Tedrick Moss was shot while visiting a friend at the Village of Delray apartment complex. The shooting resulted in catastrophic injuries, rendering Tedrick a quadriplegic. On behalf of the family, a lawsuit was filed against the apartment complex for negligent security, and the case was recently settled for $29 million. The attorney in that case, Mr. Michael Haggard, joins us live now. Mr. Haggard, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning.
First off, what was the argument for why the apartment complex was negligent in protecting Tedrick?
Yeah, unfortunately, this apartment complex had a terrible history of high crime, armed robberies, multiple burglaries, assaults, and batteries, and they added absolute no security. There was no access control, no manned security, holes throughout the perimeter fencing. It was just a terrible setup, and they allowed this terrible, terrible tragedy to happen.
I do believe we have actually some of the images of those, the holes in the fences, so we're going to show that to everybody. They can see it kind of right here where those there was holes and breaks in those in that fence. So what is the baseline for the security that we should expect from apartment complexes that we live in?
Absolutely. You know, Florida has a basic law. A commercial property owner has a duty to provide reasonable security for that premises. And so when you have crimes on those premises, you've got to react. So if you live in an apartment complex, make sure you have some type of access control. Is there manned security? What's the surveillance camera system around the property, the lighting? Those are things that unfortunately residents need to really look out for, because we've got a lot of bad actors in the apartment complex industry at this point in time in Florida.
A lot of us also live in neighborhoods where there are security gates, malfunctions, or there are openings on the street for walkers. Is it different in neighborhoods with HOAs? Are the rules and the laws different for that?
No, actually, they're the same. And HOAs, as we know, are becoming more prevalent. And the HOA has a duty to protect the common areas, not to prevent everything, but when you have foreseeable crime, they've got to do those things. Man patrols, like you mentioned, access control so that bad actors don't get on the property. It's simple security. It's been around forever, but more and more we need it because of the crime problem throughout our communities.
We had a big case in Royal Palm Beach recently. A judge threw out a case of a shooting that happened at a Publix, saying the supermarket could not be held accountable for the safety of the shoppers there. Is this a different situation, being out in public like that?
Well, no, again, Florida has a duty to provide reasonable security. In that case, the judge found that the criminal activity would not foresee an act like that happened, that tragedy at Publix that day. They didn't have the crime problem that the Delray apartment complex did in the Moss case. So, every case is different. A property needs to look at their crimes happening. And if Publix had an armed robbery, had a number of burglaries, then they would be held responsible. The judge in that case found that was unforeseeable. They didn't have that type of crime problem, and this was a totally different case.
So, if there are more of these lawsuits, or the whole apartment complex is accountable for making sure they have stronger security, this could, certainly lead to that cost being pushed down to the residents with rising rent. We certainly have an issue with our residents having more problems finding affordable housing. Could you see this becoming more of an issue down the line?
No, it's exactly the opposite. If apartment complexes had more security, they wouldn't have this crime. They wouldn't have a tragedy like Moss. It's better business for them, and their insurance premiums actually will go down because they have no claims. I mean, the first thing you need to do is protect your people. When you have good business, safe communities, the profits are going to follow. They don't follow by having dangerous communities and hoping that you have tort reform. That's not a recipe for success.
Michael Haggard, thank you so much for your time. It's certainly an interesting conversation. We appreciate you joining us here on ARC Florida.